It wasn't a great day for Trent Alexander-Arnold.
His attributes of going forward, they're needed, but they hide the defensive frailties. I'm surprised that Klopp didn't improve him as a defender. You look at his attitude sometimes to defending and it's shocking. It really is bad.
Well, I was nervous. I think the players were nervous. Certainly the Manchester United travelling fans were nervous. But as you say, there was no need to be.
The players just felt that this is enough. We can't have this image of Manchester United.
They need it to be a turning point.
I don't think I can ever say that we're at a turning point with Manchester United. You'll never be able to map that moment out when it does turn for them.
Southampton at home, a team that everybody is beating and battering out of sight. It would be so United to go and drop points.
It can't be a penalty, because if it is, then every time that there's a clash of heads in the penalty area, there'll be penalties all over the place.
I was literally looking for some other infringement, thinking it can't be that.
You can't outlaw every bit of contact, and the sort of desire by the lawmakers to do so is pretty pathetic. It is Premier League All Access with the former Coventry, Wimbledon, Tottenham and Manchester United forward Terry Gibson and Alex Crook, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, and me, Sam Matterface. Hello, gentlemen. Everything okay?
Good morning. Yeah, very well.
Terry, all well with you?
Yes, very good. Great weekend's action of football action. So, yeah, pleasant weekend.
Absolutely. Crookie's been staying with me this weekend. I bought him a present. I bought him a football shirt from the Nag's Head, Only Fools and Horses themed, because he loves Only Fools and Horses. Only got the attention span to watch an episode of that. Can't watch any other TV programme. True or false?
Not entirely true, but it's my go-to.
Is it? Okay. It's got 81 Trosser on the back, hasn't it? And
it has.
What was it? Sponsored by Trotter's
Peckham
Independent.
Peckham
It's
Springs
got
on the
Trotter's
sleeve.
Independent Traders over the front.
Yeah.
I actually wanted just to have the initials.
You know what you get next year, Alex, don't you? Trevor Francis tracksuit.
Yeah, from a mush in Shepherd's Bush. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. It was one of those weekends where probably we spoke more about the officials and manager rants than we did about some of the good football that we saw. And we did see some really good football over the course of the weekend. The intricacies of the handball law have been poured over. I was listening to the talkSPORT breakfast show on Monday morning, and a texter managed to not only sort of cite the handball law, but also then proceeded to try and interpret whether or not Joel Linton had moved his hand just a few inches towards his hip. Therefore, under the intricacy of bullet point 7 of the law, he had moved his hand towards the ball. So that should have been a foul. Now, I don't think he did do that, but I think what it shows is the law now is far too complicated. It's another example of the laws being rewritten by David Ellery in such a way that you need a battalion of lawyers to interpret them and to argue these sort of very small points. Do you know, Terry, when you were playing 1992-93, I've downloaded the laws of the game from 1992-93 this morning.
You've got far too much time on your hands.
I know. And do you know how long the handball law was in 1992?
One line.
27 words.
Yeah.
27 words. And I can read it to you because I have it. If a player handles the ball, carries, strikes, or propels the ball with his hand or arm, this does not apply to the goalkeeper within his own penalty area, he shall be penalised with the award of a direct free kick. In fact, it's even shorter than that, right? So in 1992, the handball law was you are penalised if you carry, strike, or propel the ball with your hand or arm. That's it. Now, it is a 30-word paragraph, right? This is not a joke. 30-word paragraph, and it is 5 bullet points, 2 subclauses, and a diagram. No wonder everybody's arguing about it. I vote we go back to the simplistic days, Tel.
With jumpers for goalposts and anybody was offside in any position. That was the one that drove me mad. But yeah, I guess you're referring to Spurs Newcastle. And
Spurs Newcastle, Man United.
It was a handball in my opinion. That one. I think under the laws of the game, when De Ligt handballs it, the Liverpool Manchester United game, I thought that's going to be a penalty, and I think we probably all did. Even though we don't refer back to that type of law that we were talking about back in the game in the 90s, it probably wouldn't have been given then. But now, as soon as you see the replay, we all understand sort of ish the laws of the game, and we understand that's going to be. Likewise, I thought that when I saw the replay of the Spurs Newcastle one, I'm thinking, I was so. If I'd have been co-common that game, I'd have been saying, "Oh, it's going to be disallowed." Even the Newcastle players didn't celebrate the goal. You see Anthony Gordon when he scores, he looks up and he thinks that's probably going to be chalked off because of Joel Linton's handball. There'd been no controversy if that had been disallowed.
I think under the laws of the game, that goal should have been allowed. And the reason for that is that he's less than 2 yards away from Joel Linton. His arm is down by his side in a natural position. The law was changed so that accidental handball is not punishable unless the next and immediate act afterwards by that same player is a goal. And Joel Linton didn't score the goal. So if the referee deems that to be accidental handball, and I think it was accidental, then he doesn't have to give a free kick. The problem is that it does heavily influence what happens next. So under the laws of the game, he's well within his rights not to give a free kick there, and the VAR is well within their rights not to overrule him. However, in the spirit of the game, maybe that isn't the correct decision.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think Eddie Howe hit the nail on the head, and Terry's tried to clear it out there when he said, "I don't know what handball is anymore."
Well, I can give him a 5 paragraphs and bullet points and a 30-word explainer.
I'm still not sure that would clear it up. So, I mean, the handball situation has become the most contentious of all the laws, isn't it?
Boring.
Because it is boring, but you just don't know, and the law never seems to be applied consistently. Some referees would deem that Joe Linton deliberately handled the ball, and therefore that goal would have been ruled out, and some would rule that he didn't. So
but no law is ever going to be applied consistently, right? And never has been, Terry. When you were playing, the law was not applied consistently at Highfield Road in the afternoon and at Boundary Park later that day. But we didn't know about it because there wasn't enough television cameras to show us how different the laws were being applied elsewhere. So in 1992, we didn't have a clue what it was like down the road at our local ground. We only saw either the game that we were at or the one game we were watching on television. Now we see everything, so we see it unmasks the level of inconsistency. But actually, when it comes to laws that are massively interpretable, then there is always going to be inconsistency, right?
Oh, totally, 100%. That's the only thing we can all agree on, that there will be no consistency. And regarding the Newcastle one, there is a clip, and I agree with you. Initially, I thought he hasn't handled it deliberately, and he hasn't made his body bigger by putting his arm out to the side. But there is a clip where he goes to challenge for the ball. His arm is behind his back, and then he brings it out, and that's when it hits the arm. And then you think that ball was then going to be played on to, I think it was Pedro Porro.
It was.
Instead of that, it goes to possession to
Terry,
Newcastle.
The only thing I'll say about that is this is a product of Newcastle's great pressing, which led to Lucas Bergvall being rushed into making that pass. The better pass was to the left, and to Kulusevski, who was in more space. But he didn't have time to twist his body into that position because Newcastle had pressed Papsar, they'd pressed Archie Gray, and all of a sudden that playing out from the back from Tottenham became more desperate, more stretched. And Lucas Bergvall is stretching for the ball when he plays it forward in the direction of Pedro Porro. It's a risky pass, and it was too close to Joel Linton. So, yes, it did hit him. It probably could have been handball on a different day. Yeah, I get all that. But actually, it comes about because Newcastle pressed the ball brilliantly. We should get into the football now because we've talked enough about the laws of the game. And no one wants to talk about the laws of the game, except David Ellery. And he's got no friends. So let's get stuck into the action, starting off with a heated head-to-head match at Anfield. Liverpool 2, Manchester United 2 is expected to be an easy 3 points for Liverpool, but Manchester United should have won it. I thought they took advantage of a slack Liverpool side at the weekend, and you were all nervous, weren't you, big boy, going into the game, but you needn't have been.
Well, I was nervous. I think the players were nervous. Certainly the Manchester United travelling fans were nervous, but as you say, there was no need to be. And actually, I spoke to somebody connected to Liverpool on Sunday night, and they weren't surprised that United turned up because they felt the least that they needed to do was show a bit of dignity and pride after what happened against Newcastle on Monday. I don't think it's a coincidence either that Ruben Amorim, for the first time since he got there, really has had a full week to work on his system and his tactics with the players, and they just look more comfortable, didn't they? Martinez looked more comfortable coming out from the back into midfield. I think the midfield trio of Ugarte, Fernandes and Mainu was the key to a much improved United performance, and they need to keep those three fit. And in the team moving forward, I thought Bruno Fernandes and Ugarte in particular were exceptional, and there was just a bit more character and a tougher mentality about United. And I do wonder, actually, because I spoke to Bruno Fernandes after the game, and he made reference to Joshua Zirkzee being booed off against Newcastle and the effect it had on him watching from the stands. And I wonder if in some ways they've used that to create a bit of a siege mentality and say, look, guys, we owe these supporters. We can't be in a situation where we're hanging one of our teammates out to dry. We've got to put in more effort and more commitment.
Tactically, I thought they were so much better, and that's sort of benefit of being on the training ground for an extra couple of days. One of the things that Ruben Amorim has been really upset about is that he hasn't had any time on the training ground at Carrington with his squad. I think we saw the fruits of that labour on Sunday. And one of the interesting things was those two players that play in the 10 positions dropping back into midfield to form a box of 4, which outnumbered the Liverpool midfield. So as much as it was about Mainu and Ugarte, it was also about Ahmad and Bruno Fernandes coming back into midfield and clogging that area up and giving them the numerical advantage, Terry.
Yeah, and I loved the interview afterwards with Amorim, where he was visibly, I wouldn't say angry. He said he was angry, but I think that was his English just coming across slightly wrong. But it was clear his frustration that they hadn't been able to play like that before, and he was infuriated with why that was the case. And I think that performance yesterday was full of pride for Manchester United because they were hitting rock bottom. They were becoming. Look at the position in the league table. Look at their recent run of results. Ten Hag got the sack because of the poor run of form. It wasn't getting any better under Amorim, and everyone. It was just a major talking point throughout Europe. To be honest, this poor run of form from a club, the massive club that spent all this money, chopping and changing managers, and I think the players just felt that this is enough. We can't have this image of Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes, the experienced players, they don't want an image of people laughing at them across Europe, looking at their results and wondering what on earth is going on at United. In the game against Newcastle, they started off with Casemiro and Eriksen in midfield. That was a recipe for disaster, but that wasn't through choice. The Ugarte and Fernandes were suspended. So I think it also helps when you've got your better players available and you're playing a better team and players, like Amad Diallo, who weren't initially this season first choice, but are suddenly playing well. They're working hard. They've earned their place in the team on merit. I think Arne Slot said afterwards they didn't take them lightly because Manchester United's 11 is full of good players, and there's no doubt about that. You look at it, of course it is biggest game in domestic football in this country, and it was never going to. I know it has been in the past, one-sided, but I always had a feeling this would be a lot tighter than people imagined. But I still expected Liverpool to win, so I thought draw was the right result, a fair result. I think both teams had chances, both teams had periods where they dominated, and it had a really good flow to it. It was a really, really top-class Liverpool-Manchester United game.
Yeah, it was a really great game to watch, and Harry Maguire, especially right at the end of the closing seconds, could have won it. What a miss. But Terry, just explain me the mechanics of that whole situation, because Zirkzee, some people were drawing criticism saying that he should have shot. I thought it was a bit too wide of the goal and the angle was too tight. He also spotted there were 2 players in Manchester United white waiting for the ball inside the area. But as it comes across to Maguire, I don't think it's the crispest of passes, and it bobbles up in front of him and it hits him on the shin, doesn't it?
Yeah, when Zirkzee passes it, he actually kicks it into the ground. So it's not along the floor. He kicks it into the ground. So you remember the Mesut Ozil finish that everyone thought he did on purpose? Yeah. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because it happens more than once, where you almost bounce it into the ground and then it kicks up. That was the pass from Zirkzee. So immediately, maybe a better attacking player might have dealt with it better. But as you said, Sam, it comes off his shin and skies over the bar. Maybe a better player than Zirkzee might have looked and thought it's Harry Maguire. I will shoot. That might have been the option of, a better centre forward in that position. But Zirkzee isn't full of confidence, so he probably saw it as, oh, that's handy. I haven't got to have the finish. I'm not going to get the blame if I miss. I'll pass it on to Harry Maguire. All those things go through your mind. You're talking all those decisions in seconds, and you'd be amazed. That's what does happen with footballers. You 10 things probably go through your mind in that instant, and the one thing through Harry Maguire's mind that he forgot about was keep it down. But a better centre forward would have, even off the shin, would have still kept it down. But that was a massive moment in the game.
Going to talk Liverpool in just a second, but quick question for you before we move on. Where do you think this leaves Manchester United? Because you said to me as we were watching the rerun of the game last night, so do you think it's a turning point? Do you think it's a turning point? And I said to you, I don't think I can ever say that we're at a turning point with Manchester United. You'll never be able to map that moment out when it does turn for them, because it's only going to be in retrospect when you've then seen them go on and be successful that you can go back to a day and say, I think it was that day. And the reason for that is because there's been so many false dawns.
There have, but actually, do you know what? I also last night found myself going back and looking at all of Ruben Amorim's games, and actually, Arsenal away, they got beat, but it was a good performance. City away, really good performance to come from behind and win.
So turn up in the big games.
Demolished Everton. The disappointing ones have been the recent ones, Bournemouth and Newcastle at home and Wolves away, where the standards have hit an all-time low. But there have been shoots of recovery there. If you look at the overall picture, some pretty good performances in Europe to get themselves back in contention there as well. So I hope it's a turning point. And the way that Amorim and his captain, Fernandes, were speaking afterwards, they need it to be a turning point. But we'll only know, not even when they go to Arsenal in the FA Cup, actually, because as you've mentioned, they tend to turn up in the big games. Southampton at home, a team that everybody is beating and battering out of sight. It would be so United to go and drop points. And if that happens, it's one step forward.
They could be the worst team to ever play Premier League football, by the way, Southampton. They are shambolic. And especially now they've changed the manager, because changing the manager has had the adverse effect rather than the positive effect that they were hoping for, I'm afraid. Let's talk about Liverpool. Roy Keane's harsh critic of Trent Alexander-Arnold after the game.
He's off to Tranmere, isn't he?
We talk about him going to Real Madrid. The way he's defending, he's going to Tranmere Rovers after this. Tranmere then went on Twitter and said, Trent to Tranmere, Roy. Nah, we're all right, thanks. It wasn't a great day for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think we've all got a lot of time for, but that was a really poor performance. And it's summed up by the Manchester United goal from Martinez, where he lost his man, gave the ball away initially, lost his man, and then sort of a half-hearted attempt to make a tackle on Bruno Fernandes, and then completely forgot that Lisandro Martinez was still allowed to run into the penalty area.
Yeah, I think that's the surprising element for Trent Alexander for me is we all agree on his qualities in terms of passing and crossing the ball. He isn't as quick as we all think either. I mean,
outpaced by Dalot.
He quite comfortably as well. And also at the age of 26, 27 now, his defending hasn't improved. So when you break into the team at Liverpool and we can see his qualities, I'm surprised that Klopp didn't improve him as a defender, because the fundamentals of defending Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't interested in. So it's an attitude thing, I think, rather than he can defend one-on-one. He's quick enough. He's not lightning quick, but he's quick enough. He should be at the age now where he shouldn't get beat as easily as he does. He shouldn't lose track of runners. He should have some sort of line alongside He saw Van Dijk's attitude and response after 2 or 3 occasions in the game yesterday. All those things should have been tidied up. But because a team like Liverpool, they dominate the majority of games, and his attributes of going forward, they're needed. But they hide the defensive frailties. And yesterday was one of those few games where the other team are going to fight back. They're going to have as much of the ball as you. They're going to attack down your side. They're not daft. They know that you're not the best defender in the world. So they'll pick on that. But I'm really surprised. And whether on a slot can turn him into a better defender. Because it isn't hard. I promise you, it isn't hard. As long as Trent Alexander-Arnold has the right attitude. Because you look at his attitude sometimes to defending and it's shocking. It really is bad.
6 points to Arsenal now in second place, but with a game in hand. That game, we don't know when it's going to take place, but it is against
talk of
Everton.
mid-February, I think.
Mid-February. It could be live on talkSPORT. Looking forward to it if it is. Well, it will be on talkSPORT, won't it? Because it's a place game, so I'm looking forward to that. But the next few fixtures are rather interesting because they've got their big Carabao Cup semi-final over the course of the next couple of days live on talkSPORT. Accrington at home, okay. They'll probably rest a few for that. But then they go to Nottingham Forest on Tuesday night straight afterwards. Then they go to Brentford. Those two key away games in the space of 4 or 5 days now, Terry, take on a completely different complexion, don't they? Because they are tough trips.
Oh, very, very much so. I saw it was 8 games in 25 days, a couple of Champions League games in those as well, where he can rotate because they're top of the league and they're probably going to win the league. So he can rest a few players in that. So you take that down. So it's probably 5 strong games in the 25 days if you take out Atkinson, Stanley in the Cup as well. So that's not too bad. So I think we'll see some rotations from Arne, who's done really well, to be honest. Every time you see him talk now, you can see the differences in how they were from under Klopp because of the different personalities of the manager. I have to be honest, it's slightly irritating that Liverpool got a manager I like now. and I didn't realise I didn't like Jurgen Klopp. But I guess Klopp was in your face, wasn't he? And he was looking for confrontation when needed. He was a terrible loser. And then I was watching the build-up to the game yesterday and listening to the build-up on talkSPORT. And when he's interviewed, he comes across as a really, really nice bloke. And we thought there's going to be a dip in form from Liverpool after Klopp has gone. But the difference in personalities between the two gentlemen are so extreme that it's probably good that he hasn't come in and tried to be like Jurgen Klopp. And it's a complete difference. And it's taken the players. It's been a pleasant surprise to the players that they haven't got a Klopp wannabe come in and take it on. So it's interesting to watch Liverpool's development under Slot.
Indeed. Right, okay, let's move on from this game because although it was an absolute cracker, there's a bumper Saturday to look forward to as well, or look back on as well. Starting with the Magpies, Newcastle paying a visit to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium where Spurs seem to be suffering with the January blues. I think actually it's the winter blues more than anything else because this has been going on for some time. 1 win in 8 Premier League games, and Ange Postecoglou not very happy. He shouted at me as he walked out of the interview room, "You're sitting on the fence." Although I wasn't the one who didn't tell everyone what was upsetting me. But anyway, that was just, I think he was just emotional and passionate. He doesn't like having a go at referees. He didn't want to have a go at referees, but he really wanted to have a go at a referee. So he was frustrated and he sort of got himself into a situation where he's so angry about the referee's decision, but actually can't say it because he's not allowed to because he's told everybody, you've got to respect the referee. So he's in a quandary himself. What do you think is the biggest question, actually? Or what do you question more? Do you question the officials in this game? Do you question the starting 11 from Ange Postecoglou or the changes that he made?
Well, I think when you've got an injury crisis and you're without your first and second choice goalkeeper, I thought Brandon Austin did pretty well, actually, coming in for his first ever competitive game in English football. You've not got your first choice centre-backs. You've not got your first choice left-back. You need to fill the rest of the pitch with your best players. So to start with Maddison, Basuma and Son on the bench, I thought just from an experience perspective was a little bit odd. Having said that, I thought Lucas Bergvall did pretty well in midfield, apart from his role in the goal. So maybe
I was surprised he took
decision.
him off because he was probably the player who gives him a little bit of control in that midfield area. Yeah, he did play a ball that was too close to Joel Linton for the build up to the first goal. But I think he's a terrific little player.
He is, but you've got to be careful with young players. You know, it's not an easy environment there at Spurs when they're losing games every week and they're conceding goals. It can affect your confidence. So I think you have to be a certain type of character to take that on the chin, as I think Archie Gray is actually, because it's a difficult role that he's been pitched into as well. But I found Postecoglou's reaction very strange, really, and I think it portrayed a manager under pressure. You mentioned it to me, if United beat Southampton and Tottenham lose to Arsenal, as we expect, in the next round of Premier League games, then Crisis Club United go above Spurs in the table. So there is pressure. It's a huge week with this EFL Cup semi-final, really, to keep their season alive. I know, obviously, they've got Tamworth in the FA Cup. They're still in the Europa League, but this is a brilliant opportunity to get to Wembley because you would expect Liverpool to rest players over the 2 legs. But they're just not performing, are they, Tottenham? And they're making defensive errors. Take away the furore about, was it a handball? Was Dan Burn fortunate to escape a second yellow? I think he probably was. But the reason they conceded that goal wasn't because of the handball. It's because, again, they were trying to play their way out from the back. Newcastle loved to press. and they capitalised on that. So I still think that's partly
don't
on
forget
Postecoglou.
Don't forget the second goal, by the way. There was another goal in the game, which Radu Jagricin didn't deal with properly. And also the cross wasn't stopped by the left-back Jed Spence, because Jacob Murphy produced a brilliant ball into the penalty area. So, and it wasn't the only time that Newcastle attacked. Newcastle were the better team in that first half, no doubt. And in the second half, they sat there having taken the lead and were able to manage the game a little bit more, invited Tottenham onto them a bit and looked for the counter-attack. I thought Tottenham were quite good second half, and I thought he did change it and they approached it well, but they didn't have that final killer bit of instinct, that ability to put the ball in the net. Johnson has a chance late on, injury time, flashes the ball inexplicably through the 6-yard box. It goes to Reguilon, and he flashes it straight back instead of hitting the target. Really frustrating from a Spurs point of view. What Ange said to me afterwards that I thought we probably should delve into, Terry, and ask your opinion on it, was he said, our football was outstanding. Everything we did was outstanding. We were perfect today. Were they?
Oh, no, far from it. He's fighting his corner. And it is, I mean, I've been moaning and complaining like all Spurs fans, of which I declare I'm one. I was quite proud of the performance of the weekend because of, you look at the players missing, 2 first-choice goalkeepers, 3 centre-backs, you've got your left-back missing. You end up with Jed Spence and Archie Gray playing centre-back against a team that's playing as well as Newcastle are, with arguably one of the best centre-forwards in the Premier League at the moment, in Isak. And I thought their spirit was good. I didn't think you could ask for any more. Yes, it was a surprise that Werner was playing. So I guess one of those, Maddison or Son, would have been my choice to have started ahead of Werner from the beginning. But I thought his team selection was justified because Bergvall is brilliant, by the way, €10 million and 18 years of age. Looks a real find. And he's coping with playing for a big club like Spurs. He's coping under difficult circumstances. But I was quite lifted by their performance at the weekend. The first goal that we talked about, all about the handball, came literally minutes after Spurs went 1-0 up with a disjointed team, with loads of players missing. They go 1-0 up, and then that lack of game management that consistently happens in a team that Postecoglou is managing. 25-year-old goalkeeper playing his first game for Spurs, and would the Spurs ask him to do? The manager asked him to do. We go 1-0 up. Take your time, put the ball down, wait until something's on. If not, go long. But literally a couple of minutes after the goal, he's rolling out the back under instruction because he did it every time he got the ball. It's a big day for him, and his team have gone 1-0 up, and suddenly he's got the ball and he's got to distribute it quickly. You don't. Take your time. Kill the game off for a couple of minutes, see things out. And that led to the rollout, the pass, the handball, the finish, the goal. Calamity. So that was the same mistakes, same faults keep happening. But I was lifted by the performance of Spurs at the weekend. Didn't expect the win. We didn't get the win. But I was lifted by the performance, to be honest.
Obviously, both Newcastle and Tottenham have a Carabao Cup semi-final this week. Who's more likely to progress?
I think Newcastle, because I think Arsenal obviously are struggling themselves with injury. Wanyeri, who would have started this game, picked up a problem after scoring against Brighton, so he won't play. I think Eddie Howe will name his strongest possible team because he's well aware of how trophy-starved those fans are.
And he's got Bromley on Saturday.
Yeah, so it's the perfect storm, I think, as far as Newcastle are concerned. For Tottenham, even though we expect Liverpool to rest players, with the absentees, I think over 2 legs, Liverpool have too much.
Okay, those semi-finals are live on talkSPORT. Spurs have now kept a clean sheet in 10, without a clean sheet, sorry, in 10 Premier League matches. They picked up just 5 points from the last 8 games in the top flight. That is not a great record. Brighton 1, Arsenal 1. Arsenal had a frustrating trip down to the south coast, but it all sort of was centering on the penalty decision where João Pedro and Saliba went for a high ball. It was a clash of heads. Saliba did get something on the ball, but then followed through and sort of headed João Pedro. Now, I think this happens from corners and set pieces a lot, and no one batters an eyelid. Was the referee right to give the penalty, Terry Gibson?
As a Spurs fan, 100%, of course. No, he was wrong. There was no intent there. It's a clash of heads. The days of centre halves headbutting centre forwards and claiming they were going for the ball are long gone. It doesn't happen anymore. Believe it or not, it used to, but it doesn't happen anymore. and that was just a clash of heads. I was surprised. I was literally looking for some other infringement, thinking it can't be that. And I was looking for a trip. I was looking for contact with the legs, and there wasn't. It was just an accidental clash of heads.
It can't be a penalty, because if it is, then every time that there's a clash of heads in the penalty area, there's going to be a free kick given, and that just doesn't happen. I'm sorry, there'll be penalties all over the place.
Yeah, a clash of heads is always a, both players to blame, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's a consequence of a physical sport, right? Okay, you can't outlaw every bit of contact, and the sort of desire by the lawmakers to do so is pretty pathetic, really.
Yeah, I was surprised that was given up, to be honest.
More trouble for Arsenal ahead because they have their semi-final on Tuesday night, and they've got so many injuries. I also think that apparently they're going to get done for failing to control their players. Is that right? Because they all surrounded the referee and went a bit crazy about it. They've only scored. They've only managed 9 shots on target in that game, which is not bad.
9 shots, 3 on target.
9 shots, sorry, 3 on target in that game. But previously, the last few weeks has been a little bit shot shy from Arteta's team as well. How do they solve that problem? Because Jesus comes in, he scores 6 goals in 4 games, and everyone thinks, well, maybe he's the answer. But actually, he never, ever goes on long scoring runs, and we all know that. So there needs to be some sort of action, doesn't there? Are they going to spend any money? Are they going to be forced to now? Saka and Nwaneri are both injured.
And obviously Ødegaard and Martinelli not deemed fit enough to start the game either at the weekend. And we know when Ødegaard isn't there, it's a problem for Arsenal in terms of creativity. I think they're a team who are in need of a lift in this January transfer window, because the league is not yet beyond their grasp. You know, Liverpool dropping points on the back of both Chelsea and Arsenal doing the same, keeps it bubbling under. You've mentioned the tough run of away games that Liverpool have. But Arsenal need to go on a run of wins. You know, I think they need to win 9-10 games on the spin to really push Liverpool close. And at the moment,
capable of that?
I don't think they've got the firepower for that at the moment. And therein lies the issue. And I'm not just talking about that number 9, although I do think it's an easy narrative that the fact they didn't sign a striker in the summer is going to come back and haunt them. And I think they will sign a striker next summer. There's been talk they're interested in taking Evan Ferguson from Brighton on loan. That would be a gamble on a player who's not really scored goals consistently for more than a year now, and himself has had injury problems. I know that Mikel Arteta is an admirer of Mohamed Kudus at West Ham, but that's a difficult deal to do this month. Mateus Cunha's on their radar. He's signing a new contract at Wolves. So it's difficult to know where the answer will be. But I just think the squad, the fan base, they're in need of somebody to come in this window to just build up a little bit of excitement, because they've become stodgy, Arsenal.
And if they do get that little bit of excitement, and they've just seen the result at Anfield from the weekend, 6 points the difference. Okay, yeah, there's a game in hand as well, but that hasn't been won yet. You know, let's see what happens if they do stumble Liverpool in their games against Nottingham Forest or Brentford. Then there's a window of opportunity starts to open. So, you know, let's see what happens next with them, and they really
could do worse
should
than go for Brian and Mbeumo at Brentford.
We said that about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were saying that on the White and Jordan show. It's exactly what I said. I said the guy's 25 years of age. He scores loads of goals. He scored another one at the weekend, or 2 at the weekend. Was massively heavily involved in everything that Brentford did at the weekend against Southampton. He's a terrific player. He's not going to be that expensive to get out of there, and he's in the prime of his career. He goes straight in. He's probably not going to complain if they end up benching him as the big hitters come back, and he may well force his way into the team anyway. You never know. I think it's a deal that I would definitely be exploring if I was Arsenal. Right, let's get on to some of the other bits and pieces that happened this weekend. Okay, so just a couple of touches on Manchester City, West Ham, and let's talk a little bit about Chelsea, Crystal Palace. Chelsea, Crystal Palace, frustrating again. Oh my God. You know, they get themselves into this great position, and then, you know, Nicholas Jackson misses a hatful of chances. They give away silly goals. They don't kill off the game. It happened against Fulham, where they got themselves into a great position, but then didn't make the changes that they needed, and then allowed Fulham back into the match, and then gave the match to Fulham late on. Again against Crystal Palace, they're all right, especially in the first half, but then just can't see it through right to the very end, and that's a problem for Enzo Maresca, and I think he's got to think about that going into the next few weeks. Obviously, they've got the FA Cup next Saturday, but they've got a week off in the build-up to that before they end up the following midweek with a couple of tricky fixtures actually over the next couple of all the fixtures seem to be tricky. They went to Ipswich and lost. They went to Palace and didn't win. So any fixture for them at the moment is a little bit tricky. Not so tricky on the face of it. Manchester City 4, West Ham 1. However, having been the saddest man in the universe and watched the whole 90 minutes of this game back on Saturday night, it wasn't as simple as it was made out, because Manchester City's pressing, and we've talked a lot about Newcastle's pressing, is miles off the mark, Terry.
And West Ham it could have been 4-4. West Ham had some really good chances. It's contradiction watching West Ham, because I know Lopetegui better than most. And when I see West Ham at the moment, they don't look like a Lopetegui team. So they go away to Manchester City and they play one up front, the two wide players, Paquetá playing just behind the front. And it's so open, and that's not what I expected. I think it's what the West Ham...
What did you expect?
I expected 3 solid, physical midfield, central defensive midfield players. I expected the wingers that they'll be tucking back in, so at times it's a 4-5-1. People expected him, they anticipated he was going to be your classic Spanish manager, like the Pep Guardiola, and playing out the back, playing into midfield. He wasn't like that at Sevilla and other clubs he's managed.
No.
So but in this game, what I'm seeing from West Ham is a manager that's not being true to himself. He's trying to manage the way that he was told to manage to get the job, to be different to David Moyes.
Is the issue here is that actually he is the Spanish David Moyes,
Yeah.
and he's trying desperately not to be the Spanish David Moyes, which causes him a little bit of angst because he's doing something he and the players probably aren't comfortable with.
Caught in no man's land, and that's it. You've explained it perfectly. That was the point I was trying to get across, and that's the problem. He got the job based on the fact his team were going to be more expensive than David Moyes. And I thought, well, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. You know, if he wanted that, can't get other managers from La Liga. But he wasn't one. He is a good manager. He does make his teams competitive. His teams are always physical, competitive. But you're not seeing that from West Ham. So in this game, it's an open-ended game, and Man City are probably going to win that type of game against West Ham. That's what happened.
Even if they weren't very good, Manchester City.
Well, they've not been very good in their last 2 wins, have they? Because their press was off against Leicester as well. And Leicester, like West Ham, created some great opportunities to get something from the game. And then you look at the fixtures, obviously Salford in the FA Cup this weekend, despite the fact
Salford are doing brilliant.
They're going well under Carl Robinson. They've gone from 20th to 3rd in the space of a few weeks. But you would expect City, who tend to name strong teams in the Cups, to go through there. But then it's Brentford away. I'm going to be there for talkSPORT next midweek. And you look at Brentford's home record and their strengths. I think City are going to have to be a lot better than they have been in those last 2 wins. Otherwise, I think they'll get beat.
Interesting. De Bruyne's comments were quite interesting post-match. Strange response. When he asked about his contract, he said, "I don't care. I'm just trying to get back to my level. I feel like every week I'm getting better." There were so many problems with their press that actually, when they lost the ball and West Ham went on the attack, De Bruyne, Foden, Savinho, Haaland are all caught up the other end of the pitch. And there were so many gaps. And you just thought, well, this is not right. And then there was one incident right at half-time where De Bruyne makes a run back to the edge of the penalty area to try and make a recovery run. And Pep goes mad on the sidelines. Like, he's so happy about it. He's like, "This is fantastic. Fantastic recovery run. Brilliant. Well done." Goes up to him, grabs him round the shoulders and said, "That's what I need from you. That's what I need from you." I was like, crikey, where are we? I feel like we're back in 2016 here. This is crazy. But there's obviously stuff that's not right there. And again, Lisandro Martinez, when asked about the difference between the performance on Sunday and what's been gone before, just pointed to his head and said it's all up here. And there's a bit of that with Manchester City as well.
Can you imagine the gaps that Rodri was plugging? Now he's not there. We're looking and thinking, oh, God, I'm sure in the past there was 4 left up ahead of the ball, but Rodri was running around putting out fires everywhere and it wasn't a panic. But now he's not there. It's a panic.
And I think mentally, as Sam's alluded to, that's what the players think as well. They're looking around and thinking, well, where's Rodri? We need you.
Yeah, we didn't have to do this much running when he was here.
Yeah, exactly.
Terry, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Thank you to Alex Crook as well for joining me in the basement.
In the bunker.
In the bunker. The heating okay for you now? He moaned last night that it was too cold.
My
for him
feet are
in
still
this house.
cold.
It was
My
too
feet are
cold.
still cold.
So I turned up the heating for him because he's a delicate little flower, right? We'll be back on Thursday to bring you a preview to the weekend's FA Cup action. Actually, we've got loads of FA Cup action live on talkSPORT. It's the home of the FA Cup. More FA Cup games than any other broadcaster ever live on talkSPORT this weekend. So join us for that. We'll build up to it on Thursday. Thank you very much for listening, and tell everyone about Premier League All Access from talkSPORT.